What's going on, Tiger fans? So, sorry I'm a little bit late to the game, having a video about what went on today. So, Scott Harris made his second trade of his tenure, well, second big trade of his tenure, I guess you could say. Gregory Soto and Cody Clemens are no longer members of the Detroit Tigers today. Scott Harris and company traded Gregory Soto and Cody Clemens to the Philadelphia Phillies for Nick Maton, Matt Vierling, and Donnie Sands. So, before we get into the trade, let's look at how it affects the Tigers. Firstly, I think if you look at the philosophy of the team, and so far what it says to me going forward is they really looked at everything with their philosophy and their view of controlling the strike zone. And one thing that Gregory Soto and Joe Jimenez definitely did not do consistently, that is throw strikes. We've seen both sides of Gregory Soto. Now, there was a lot of people in Detroit that disliked Gregory Soto, and there was a lot of people that wanted him gone, hoped that he was going to get traded this offseason. But with the amount of team control left that he had, I wanted to keep him around because, and I had said in many videos before this, guys who throw 101 from the left side just don't fall out of trees and come around every single day. So even though that the walks were high and it was a bit of a roller coaster with him, it was still, I guess you could say, an effectively wild reliever. A lot of people didn't like his ineffectiveness, and he definitely had some inability when the pressure wasn't on to get any kind of meaningful outs. His ERA in non-save situations this past year was absolutely horrifically bad. And, his ERA, if you look from the past 2 years, he actually had technically a better year by ERA this past year, but 21 was a better year, I would say, from a dominant standpoint. This past year, Soto, if you guys remember, actually got demoted out of the closer's role for a couple of weeks because Soto had that stretch to where he couldn't throw his slider whatsoever. And it was to the point that it was so bad that AJ Hinch removed him from the closer's role. And he had come back and started getting a little bit of confidence, but Gregory Soto essentially pitched this whole year with one pitch, and that was a fastball because he has a changeup that he barely uses any bit of the time, and it's mainly fastball slider. He destroys left-handers and can't get out righties as well. And he only gave up one home run all year, which was great. But if you look at his numbers compared to 22 to 21, his strikeouts fell over a whole strikeout this past year, and his walks went down 0.2 of a walk. Still over 5, closing in on 6. It was 5.8 in 21. I think it was 5.6 this past year. His whip was higher this year. He allowed a lot more base runners. Gregory Soto, in a nutshell, was, if you guys remember, there was a game against the Angels, and this was the game that Kerry Carpenter and Ryan Kreidler went back-to-back, and the Tigers won it. Well, Gregory Soto then comes out for the save, a one-run lead, and strikes out Mike Trout, strikes out Shohei Ohtani, walks Mike Ford, gives up a hit, and then finally gets the save. That was pretty much Gregory Soto in a nutshell this past year. Made it interesting, very inconsistent from batter to batter. We would see, saves this year to where he would get the first two guys out on 7 pitches, and he would finish the inning with 30 pitches. And that was the biggest thing that their complaints were about him, was the inconsistencies. And that's why a lot of people wanted him gone. Now, getting back to the organizational philosophy, the thing that Scott Harris has preached the entirety so far, and from the day one press conference, is controlling the strike zone on both sides of the plate. And you've seen what they did to Joe Jimenez. They went and they traded him to Atlanta for Justin Henry Malloy. And now they went and shopped, Gregory Soto to the Phillies for Maton, Vierling, and Sands. But looking at how this impacts the Tigers, you guys got to remember, Wilmer Flores and Reese Olson, they're knocking on the door. Those guys were studs last year, and a lot of teams will bring up guys that are starters and put them in the bullpen before they work them into the rotation, just to get their feet wet and give them major league innings. And you also have to remember that Andrew Chafin's still out there. The Tigers could go get him if they wanted to have a reunion with how good he was last year. They're going to have to pay him a little bit more. Also, Alex Lang was absolutely dominant last year. They have a guy in the wings waiting to go. Now, Lang last year was pretty good from start to finish, but even he had a couple of hiccups last year. And Lang is also a guy that at times can struggle with his command. But when you have that kind of that two-seam sinker that he has with that curveball that he throws, which is that's got so much tilt and it's really hard. It's like a low to mid 80s curveball with that much break. He's a closer waiting in the wings, and I am sure that when the front office went and looked at this trade, going in hindsight, like, what are we going to do for next year? They're like, well, Lang is by far the better of the two arms. He was more effective. He throws more strikes. He didn't give up that many home runs. He can get out both lefties and righties. And predominantly the league is mainly right-handed hitters anyways. So when you have a guy that's a lefty, the handedness only plays so much of a factor so often because of the amount of righties that you face versus lefties. So you got Lang still there. You still got Will Vest still there. You still got Jose Cisnero. You can bring back Chafin. You still got guys in the minors that can come up. The Tigers' depth within their bullpen is really good. It's not going to take much, I think, to replace Gregory Soto. But if you look at this trade from a whole now and looking what the Tigers got, I don't know if this was an underwhelming return considering that Gregory Soto had 4 years of team control left versus Joe Jimenez had a year, and they got the Braves' 12th best prospect and Jahen Malloy. And Jahen Malloy, looking at his peripheral numbers and looking at the kind of hitter he could potentially be based off of the amount of at-bats that he had in the minor leagues, even though he's just starting to get into AAA, his profile fit really nice with the new Tigers narrative of, a lot of walks. He did have some strikeouts, but he had a lot of walks, good on base, good OPS, good slugging. Not the best defensively, but, he fits that mold of working the ball, working the strike zone, swinging at, pitches to do damage on, and being able to get on base and put the ball in play. Looking at these guys, so I had to do a lot of, I guess you could call catching up. Obviously, being a Tigers fan and following the league, I know a little about a lot. So the Tigers it is what it is. I wouldn't have this channel if I didn't follow the team like I did. But it's not like I'm sitting there watching the Philadelphia Phillies every single night. Do I know about their team? Do I know about their players? Yes, absolutely. But am I to the point where I know anything about Donnie Sands? Absolutely not. So looking at this and doing some digging and listening to what Philly fans are saying, and going on Reddit sometimes is actually really good because you can go in, and if you go in and read what other fan bases, that the opposing fan base on the trade is saying about it, you usually get a good idea if it's a bad trade, how the players were received in the fan base, what's the perception of their future value versus what their current value is, if people are mad that they're going. And Vierling and Maton were very well liked on the Phillies. Now, both of those guys, they really weren't everyday players. Now, I watched a video about Matt Vierling's 2022 season, and Vierling last year started out really bad, and he got optioned to AAA a few times. He was hitting really bad, and then had a really hot June. And then after June, he struggled a lot, and that's when the Phillies made the trade for Brandon Marsh, and Vierling only ever started in the outfield when there was days where they're giving Kyle Schwarber a day off or Castellanos a day off, and basically just spot started him around. Now, if you're looking at Vierling's, some of his hard hit percentages, Vierling was really unlucky last year. If you're looking at like his weighted on base percentage and his expected hit average and all that good stuff, if you go and look at all those numbers, Vierling hits the ball, and he hits the ball hard. And he is extremely fast. The guy is in the 97th percentile of sprint speed in the MLB, and I think he was the 19th fastest based off of sprint speed in the MLB last year, which is insane. That's elite of elite. That's the top, 0.5% of all MLB when you're up in that thing. So that's outstanding. But if you're looking at that, you look at his barrel rate, it's not great. It's in the 50 percentile. That's not good. But you look at the hard hit and exit velocity, it's in the 80th percentile. I think it was the 85th percentile, so that's great. So when he's hitting the ball hard, and his launch angle is conducive to hitting doubles and home runs. He's got some pop. He hasn't really showed it yet, but it's in there. Based off of his hard hit percentage, his average exit velocity, and his launch angle, this is a guy that could potentially blossom into a dude that could be like a Jeimer Candelario kind of thing where he's hitting doubles and popping out 15 home runs. Now, if you're looking at like his defensive prowess, he really isn't anything super special with the glove. He was in the 5 percentile, which is almost one of the worst in the MLB in the outfield for like starting jumps and routes taken. So him and Maton both provide defensive versatility. Him and Maton both have played the infield. Him and Maton both have both played the outfield. So it's really good that the Tigers got a guy that hits the ball and hit the ball hard. And from what I've gathered from Phillies fans and things I've read, is that he didn't have an opportunity really to play every single day. A lot of it was his own doing, where he struggled, he was inconsistent, then he was good for a month, got some playing time, struggled again, and the Phillies couldn't have that because they were trying to make a playoff push to make it in there. Now, Maton is another bit of the same. Now, Maton has hit double-digit home runs already, and he actually took Sandy Alcantara deep twice, which is extremely impressive to hit that kind. He's a very lanky kind of dude, and you wouldn't expect that kind of power out of him to be able to hit it, but this guy has hit some oppo shots at the bank. He has hit two balls and piss missile rocket balls off of Sandy Alcantara. And Matt Vierling actually hit a home run off of Josh Hader. It was like a back-to-back shot. With not Nick Castellanos, I forget who, but it doesn't matter. But Maton has shown bat speed and he's shown ability to go out and be able to hit balls out of the ballpark. But another guy that really hasn't had a definitive spot on the Phillies, because if you look at their team last year, Gene Segura was hurt, so they had him play some short. They had him play some second. They had him play some outfield, need be, because then Bryson Stott finally got in. After Joe Girardi was fired, Bryson Stott finally got in some reps at shortstop as well. So he was kind of all over. They were both very platoony utility-style players. So from what I've gathered and everything else, they were very well liked by the fan base, and a lot of people have all said the same thing from what I've read, that they have potential to be good players, but they didn't really have a fit in Philadelphia because of other players blocking them, because of playing time opportunities were just not there consistently for them. So given more at-bats, more chance, more opportunity, that they could potentially be something good. Like I said, I really like Matt Vierling's hard hit rate, and I like that his exit velocity is in the upper percentile, and I like that what I've saw so far looking at Nick Maton's stats for his ability to hit doubles and home runs, and you go look at these guys, their career minor league stats, these dudes are 800 OPS guys in the minor leagues, so these guys are good hitters. Now, there is some definite strikeout there. Vierling's strikeout to walk ratio is really bad. He has struck out a lot, and that's the kind of thing that worries me because you already got a lineup that has so much strikeouts in it. The Justin Henry Malloy thing, I like that kind of approach. Mind you, he hasn't even had a cup of coffee in the big leagues yet, but I still like the peripheral numbers that he has in the minor leagues, being able to walk that many times. Because he may not walk 100 times in the major leagues, but at least the peripherals are there, and his approach has already been set, and it's stayed consistent through all levels of the minor leagues, versus, you see someone like Vierling and Maton where there's a lot more strikeout, and they've already had a cup of coffee in the big leagues, and there's a little bit of sample size. Both these guys don't have much sample size, but at least enough of a sample size to get an idea of, hey, this is what they might be over the long-term coming years of what kind of players they could be. Now, what I think this is now that Harris cleaned house, with whether it's Willie gone, Harold Castro gone, Victor Reyes gone, I don't want to say that these guys are going to be the new bench, because if you go and trade a two-time all-star closer for bench depth, 3 bench depth bats, that's a piss poor trade, because you can't go away, even though you're dealing from a position of depth. You can't go and give away a piece of that kind of caliber for depth on your bench. Now, mind you, the quality of the depth could be better, and their versatility is good, but you need at least one of these 3 guys to be an everyday starter, and they have to be some kind of a contributor. It can't be you're giving away elite talent with 4 years of team control, and essentially you got someone to replace Harold, Willie, and Victor Reyes. You can't do that. If you're going to deal from a position of depth, and especially that many years of team control, it's got to be someone that's going to contribute. It's got to be someone that's an everyday regular. It's got to be someone that could at least play you 140 games. Now, I love their defensive versatility. Nick Maton's got a really good glove. Go look at some of his defensive highlights on YouTube. The kid can pick it. He's got a glove. He's definitely, from what I saw in the videos, he's definitely more of an infielder than an outfielder. But who knows? We've seen what A.J. Hinch has done. a la Willie Castro playing center field. So who knows how they play him next year. But another thing is Scott Harris talked about getting a right-handed hitting outfielder. Well, Maton and Vierling, you got a left to right matchup right there. So not only did you take care of what you wanted in the outfield and in the infield, you got two guys that can play both positions, and each one has a different handedness with defensive versatility. So they knocked that off the list too. So what I'm hoping for is they get an opportunity to play in Detroit, and everything that these Philly fans have said that I've read, and some of the articles I've read, and watching some of these videos about these players, that given more opportunity, which Scott Harris has already said that he wants to give younger guys a look and an ample opportunity to earn a position and a spot, giving these guys a look, that what all these people are saying, that they needed more playing time, they needed more opportunity, they needed more chances to fully blossom because there's more there, that it comes to fruition. Because both these guys, all three of these guys, Donnie Sands has only played 3 games in the major leagues, so who knows with him yet. They have so much team control left. They're all in their mid-20s. It would have been nice if they would have been like 22, 23 years old. It is what it is. They're still relatively young, and they're only a couple years away from really entering their prime. Given a chance on a team that has a lot of chance and a lot of opportunity, hopefully we see that. Hopefully Vierling this year is a lot less, unlucky and all those hard hits in a park as big as Comerica Park with those gaps. He has an opportunity to go out there and put those balls that he was getting robbed on in play and into the deeper gaps, into the triples alley in right field and left field, and have a couple of pull shots down the line. Comerica Park's a great gap to gap park for gap hitters, and that's what Vierling is. He hits the gaps, but last year he was really unlucky. So hopefully, this year Vierling, some of those, doesn't get babbited to death, and some of those hits fall, and his average comes up, and he's a more productive player because there's opportunity for him. And hopefully Nick Maton, the Tigers need a third baseman. Justin Henry Malloy is only going to be in triple ball, and you don't know how long it's going to take. And this year, you got to watch Austin Meadows. You don't know how many games he's going to play after having all those fluke injuries. You got to watch that. And, there's going to be plenty of chances for these guys to all get everyday regular playing time, and A.J. Hinch move them around. Because if there's one thing A.J. Hinch is good at, and one thing he's not afraid to do, it's move everyone around and give everyone opportunities in different spots. And already having Ryan Kreidler as well is another piece of positional depth that is still unproven, but he's got a good glove. That's a nice crop of guys. It's a lot better than looking at, as much as I love Harold Castro, you're not looking at the bench going, okay, well, Willie Castro is not really that good. He can occasionally run into one. Victor Reyes is okay, but he's not really an everyday player. And you look, these guys all got minor league contracts. So, me going, wow, I can't believe they didn't sign them. Major league teams didn't give them major league contracts. And then Harold Castro, as much as we all loved hitting Harold, you look at this bench and you look at some of this positional depth that a lot of it got tested because of all the injuries. Like, ugh. Now you got actual guys that have had, actual MLB, experience, and they have, I guess, ceiling still, versus, these guys are utility bench depth bats that are never really going to be anything, and they're not even starters on any other MLB team, which just goes to show you, because they all got minor league contracts. So who knows? I'm hoping this isn't the latter, where they traded an all-star closer for bench depth bats that don't become everyday contributors, or at least one of them becomes everyday contributors, and you just traded away a guy with 4 years of team control to replace your bench. That to me is kind of if you're gonna go out and get Justin Henry Malloy, the Braves 12th best prospect for Joe Jimenez with a year, you figure one of the names that were to come back in this Philly trade might hold a little bit more water, a little bit more weight when it comes to being a for sure everyday thing, versus a couple of guys that have been, spot MLB starters with, not much proven track record yet. So I like the Donnie Sands part of it. We'll see what he does. Jake Rogers really has never been much of a hitter. He was okay before he had that Tommy John surgery. He looked the most hitterish that he had ever looked. Donnie Sands was a Yankees prospect for a while. He had 18 home runs in 2021 in the minor leagues. So he has some pop in that bat. He's got a lot of doubles if you look at his career minor league stats. So who knows? I mean, could he supplant Jake Rogers? Who knows? I mean, it brings an opportunity come spring to find someone to pair behind Eric Haas because they need Eric Haas as bad in there. And losing Cody Clemens isn't a big deal. I mean, Cody Clemens didn't have a spot on his team. He's good defensively and he could put the ball out of the ballpark sometimes. But, after he got called up in June, he went 0 for 19 before he got his first major league hit. And then, A.J. Hinch gave him a lot of opportunities. And then after that 0 for 19, he got his first hit and shown inabilities to put the ball in play consistently and hitting a lot of pop-ups and, not really hitting the ball with any kind of authority. He didn't really get a lot of playing time. And they were playing Jonathan Scope a lot, and they were still playing Jeimer Candelario a lot. And, he got some starts in the outfield, and he got some starts at second and third. He's got a really good glove. I mean, he made some really nice plays at third, and he made some really nice plays at second. And he's got some defensive versatility, but I don't ever really know if the stick's ever going to play in the major league level. He's got pop. I mean, you seen he hit that grand slam in Seattle, and he hit that home run off of Joe Mantiply, which was a left home run, which was extremely impressive. But he just didn't really have a place on this team. Ryan Kreidler, I would say, is a better option than Cody Clemens, and that was only after 5 weeks because the glove's far superior, and I think the stick could equally do the same kind of thing. I don't think he's got as much power as Cody Clemens does, but I think Ryan Kreidler, with being better with defensively, there's no reason why he can't hit as much as Cody Clemens did, which wasn't much at all. And overall, losing Gregory Soto, they have a lot of bullpen depth. They're dealing up from a position of depth, of a position that they could easily fill. I think Alex Ling next year is no doubt in my mind the closer, and he's going to go in and do a pretty bang-up job. That guy has got absolutely filthy stuff, and I think everyone else behind him just slots up, and we don't know who's going to show up in spring. You don't know if someone like Reese Olson or Wilmer Flores, comes around and, they make the bullpen. Or you still got Matt Boyd that, if he doesn't make the starting rotation, you could put him in there, and you still got Tyler Alexander. So they have a lot of positional depth, and their bullpen was absolutely dominant last year, and they have a lot of good arms still in it. So that's really all I got for you guys today. Tigers trade Gregory Soto, the Philadelphia Phillies, for Nick Maton, Matt Vierling, and Donnie Sands. So here's the hoping that this wasn't just a trade of a good player for some bench depth. We actually get an everyday regular and someone to help come in and contribute to making his team at least somewhat of a decent offensive club next year. That's all I got for you guys today. Have a good one. Go Tigers.